Good morning. Today is Sunday, May 26, 2024. Happy Lag BaOmer. Today is Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. We count the days of the Omer from Pesach until Shavuos. Shavuos is the 50th day, so we're up to 33. Lamed Gimel 33, Lag BaOmer. And this one day, the 33rd day of the Omer, is special. And it's fascinating because it is entirely unclear why it is special. And some of the reasons that are offered contradict each other, and some of them defy logic. But there is one approach that has, I think, particular resonance this year, and I hope we can all benefit from integrating its message. Okay, so the mitzvah is to count the Omer from the day of leaving Egypt, the first day of Pesach. We start, day number 1 is the second day of Pesach, from leaving Egypt until arriving at Sinai, which is Shavuos. Now, much later in our history, another characteristic of these days emerges. And we've discussed this passage of the Talmud before. Amru, this is now a century after the destruction of the Second Temple. So this is about, let's say, 2,000 years ago, over 1,400 years after the original command from God to count the Omer, 1,400 years later, 1,500 years later, Amru, the rabbis in the Talmud said, Shnei Maser Elef Zugim Talmidim Hayil Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. That's a total of 24,000. Migivat ad Antiparas. From Givat till Antiparas. V'kulan Mesu B'perek Echad. And they all died during one period of time. Mipnei Shlonagu kavod zeh lezeh, because they did not treat each other with the proper respect. Tana, we learned, kulam mesu mi pesach vi'ad atzeres. All 24,000 of these students died between Pesach and Shavuos. We discussed several aspects of this passage, but nonetheless, this passage is mysterious on multiple levels. 24,000 advanced Torah scholars died within a period of less than 50 days because shalonagu kavod zeh lezeh, they didn't treat each other with the proper respect. However you explain that, and we tried to give one explanation last Thursday night, however you explain it, whatever it was, how could it have been deserving of this catastrophic response? 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva dying? The Talmud gives us no answer. There are no hints to an answer. And within the Talmud, there is no consequence of this story in any way until centuries later, when practices developed to observe these days as a period of mourning. The idea of using these days of a period of mourning is not mentioned anywhere in the Talmud. It is not mentioned until hundreds of years later. The practice that we have during this period, no weddings, no enjoying music, no haircuts, like one who is mourning, because we are in mourning for the students of Rabbi Akiva, that is not even mentioned till centuries later. And there is no clear answer to the question, how does this character of sadness and mourning get overlaid on the biblical character of these days of enthusiasm and anticipating arriving at Sinai to experience God's revelation? There are no answers. There are only questions and guesses. Maybe this text of the Talmud is a kind of a code. It's telling us a different story for some reason that could not be stated explicitly. And then, in the 13th century, it's only in the 13th century, that's more than 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years after the narrative of the Talmud, we have Rabbi Menachem Meiri, famous Talmudic commentator, is the first source, now I want to be very precise here, is the earliest source that records that there's something special about Lag BaOmer. Again, it's more than 1,000 years after the events of Rabbi Akiva. Here are the words of the Meiri. V'Kabbalah biyad ha'Gaonim, and there is a tradition handed down from the times of the Gaonim, the earlier scholars, Shebiyom Lamed Gimel BaOmer, that on the 33rd day of the Omer, Paska Hamisa, no one died that day. The deaths resumed the next day until Shavuos, but on the 33rd day of the Omer, no one died. Now, that is the earliest mention of anything unique about the 33rd day of the Omer as opposed to the 32nd, the 34th, or any other day. And, again, even here, there is no mention of any practice associated with it. It was only another 300 years later until the first mention of this day as a celebration, as a happy day, when the mourning is lifted, weddings take place, we listen to music, we get haircuts, which is how we commemorate it today. That only the earliest mention of that is just a little bit over 500 years. Before that, no mention of Lag BaOmer as a happy day. But what is the root of the celebration? As I said, there are many answers, all of them only from the modern era. But based on the earliest source, which is Meiri, which is what I read to you, the root of celebrating today is that during a terrible period in time, about 2,000 years ago, during the time of Rabbi Akiva, a time of incomprehensible tragedy, the deaths of 24,000 of the greatest scholars of Israel over a period of less than 50 days, there was one day where no one died. And it is the genius of the Jewish people that we turned nothing bad happened, no one died today, into a reason to celebrate. Because here's the truth. Great is nice. Exciting is nice. Good, calm, nothing bad happened is much more valuable than that. That's what we need to take from Lag BaOmer. With all the terrible things that are happening in the world, in the Jewish world, in the wider world, we are in the midst of one of the most incomprehensible, difficult periods in Jewish history. If today is a calm day, if today it just goes smoothly, and of course, in the Jewish world, we know what's going on, and even that is going to be very, very difficult today. But let's say there will be a day in our lives that is calm, nothing terrible happens. Celebrate. That's a reason to celebrate. I've told this story before, and this story has taken on very special meaning for me, and I'm sure that I'll be repeating it again. I heard this story from Dr. David Pelcovitz. It's an incredible story, and it goes like this. In Yerushalayim, every Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the Jewish month, every month, there was a rabbi in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim, and he would go to the lobby of Shaarei Tzedek Hospital, famous hospital in Jerusalem. He would go to the lobby of the hospital, and he would stand in the lobby. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't talk to anybody. He stood in the lobby for a couple of hours, and then he left. Now, people would notice him standing there. Do you need help? Do you need directions? Can I help you? Can I guide you? No. Finally, the people that work there started to notice that he's coming on some kind of regular basis. He comes to the lobby, he stands, he doesn't do anything for a couple of hours, and then he leaves. Finally, someone went up to him and said, "It's just so curious. Could you please explain to us, why are you here? What are you doing?" So here's what he said. He said, "I know that it is very easy to be grateful to, let's say, a person who does an act of kindness for me that's unexpected. Person who gives me a present. Person who helps me when I'm in trouble. It's easy to have an expression, a feeling of real gratitude to that person under that circumstance. But it's much harder," he said, "to be grateful, to thank those that in fact we owe the most to. If a parent does a kindness for a child, or a child does a kindness for a parent, or a spouse does a kindness for the other, we're habituated. It's every day. It's all the time. It goes on. We're habituated. It's harder each individual time to feel grateful. And this is true in every area of life." So this rabbi said to the person who asked him, "Once a month, I need to reset my gratitude clock. Once a month. I come here to the lobby of this hospital, and I look at the sign that lists all the departments and which floor of the hospital each department is on. And I look at the sign, and I go down the list, and I see cardiology, and I think to myself, Baruch Hashem, thank God, my heart is healthy right now. And then I see gastroenterology, and I say to myself, wow, thank God, Baruch Hashem, right now, my gastro system is working well. And then I see orthopedics, and I say to myself, well, I can't say to myself, but in Yirtzeh Hashem, I can say to myself, Baruch Hashem, my orthopedics, my bones are all healthy. And then I go down to urology, and I say, Baruch Hashem, the plumbing is working. And I go through every single department of the hospital, and I feel gratitude for everything that is working, limb by limb, organ by organ, system by system. And I focus on that gratitude. And I feel recharged for the month. I heard this story several years ago from Dr. Pelcovitz. I've told this story before. And this year, I'll tell you, I've started to do the same thing. I'm in the hospital a lot. And I just look at those signs. And I think to myself, okay, so there are several departments where I have been. But I think to myself, Baruch Hashem, thank God for all the things that are getting better and all the things that feel good and all the things that are working. Baruch Hashem, thank God, to be filled with gratitude, to have our gratitude clock restarted. That's Lag BaOmer. That's today's celebration, to be able to celebrate a day that nothing terrible happened, to be able to celebrate that day. Happy Lag BaOmer. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.